So it's my great pleasure to welcome first His Excellency Dr. Prospero De Vera, who is the chairman of the Commission of Higher Education in the Philippines. He has been appointed in 2018 by President Rodrigo Duterte, and he will be in charge until 2022. With Dr. De Vera being the chairperson of the Commission for Higher Education, he's also at the Board of Regents of the University of the Philippines, and this is the highest policy-making body of the university, where he served also as Vice President for Public Affairs from 2011 onwards. He is an alumnus of UP. He had earned his Bachelor of Arts, majored in History, with minors in Political Sciences, and later also received his PhD in Public Administration from the same university. Chairman, I hand over the floor to you. It's a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much to Mr. Morikawa Toro of the Asia-Europe Foundation, Her Excellency Cara Owen, the British High Commissioner in Singapore, my co-panelists for this morning, and all those who are online for this program. Good morning to everyone. I'm going to present a short presentation on how the Philippine government has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and the different things that the Commission on Higher Education has done since March. So I think I have screen shared already. Next slide, please. Okay, I entitled my presentation, The Bayanihan Spirit. In Filipino, bayanihan is a term that means cooperation among Filipinos, communal and civic activity, and in the modern times, the spirit of teamwork. The bayanihan spirit is the spirit that we harnessed in addressing the impact of COVID-19 on the higher education system in the Philippines. So how did the Philippines respond to COVID-19? At the national level, the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Communicable Diseases was the anchor for different government agencies to respond to COVID-19. While it is true that at the start, COVID-19 was seen as a health problem, what we did in the Philippines was to expand the membership of the IATF, realizing that the cross-cutting impact of COVID-19 cut across all key departments of government. And so the IATF was expanded from essentially a health, trade, and disaster agency membership to include all other members of the cabinet, including the Commission on Higher Education. And so the IATF has functioned until now as the interagency body that determines national government policies with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we decide all matters by letting the different departments, the different secretaries bring in their agency perspectives and considering also the agency perspectives of the other offices of government. So it is the IATF that determines the quarantine classification of the different geographic areas, and the decisions of the IATF are brought to President Rodrigo Duterte for approval. So that is the mechanism at the national level to respond to COVID-19. On the part of the Commission, immediately upon the imposition of a national quarantine system for COVID-19, we organized all public and private higher education institutions on the ground. The approach was to act as fast as possible using the whole of nation approach through the IATF, but depend and mobilize universities and colleges on the ground because they knew what was happening in their respective jurisdictions together with local governments. So all key decisions of the Commission and all key decisions of the IATF had inputs coming from universities and colleges all over the country. In March, I issued several CHED guidelines or advisories, and we adopted a flexible learning policy as far as higher education is concerned. We instructed all higher education institutions to adopt flexible learning systems appropriate to their localities in order to continue learning and complete the semester. Next. What is flexible learning as far as the Philippines is concerned? It is a policy that allows higher education institutions to adopt the appropriate type of learning based on the connectivity on the ground, the capability of faculty members and students, and the consultation with local governments. So universities can go either full online, they can combine online and offline options, and they can go offline in areas where there is limited connectivity. This flexible learning policy was adopted by the IATF in May and continues to be the higher education policy as far as all public and private universities are concerned. The Bayanihan spirit was very much alive in the case of the Philippines. We partnered or we coordinated with the public and private universities to address problems on the ground. For example, with private universities, we worked so that they could extend the collection of fees from their students, which was impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. We worked with state universities and colleges and local governments to convert some of their facilities to become quarantine areas or isolation units of local governments. We prepared guidelines to look into the possibility of holding limited face-to-face classes in January or the second semester as the health situation improves. We are working with universities to prototype retrofitted classrooms for the possibility of holding limited face-to-face classes. And we have been able to resume some face-to-face learning for interns and residents of medical programs in hospitals that are facing or that are serving as COVID centers. The one thing that we learned or that we were surprised when COVID struck was the capability of our state universities and colleges to produce face masks, face shields, disinfectants, and other COVID-19 related products. They started producing this in March. We are providing additional funding for state universities to continue producing this, but not anymore for frontliners, not anymore for local governments, but for their own students and faculty. Our Bayanihan spirit was also in full display when we put an online website or an online portal where we can put quality materials that students and faculty can use. So many top private and public universities gave their materials for free. This will allow higher education institutions, as they adjust to flexible learning, to have access to good materials that they can use. And our telephone companies, our telcos, partnered with us to give free access to students to all of these materials. We embarked on a massive teacher training program, training about 189,000 faculty members in public and private universities, either through funding coming from the commission to top universities who will do this, or working with universities that are giving this for free. So we understand, or we know, that the shift to flexible learning requires faculty members who have the capability to use technology, the capability to be able to shift their curriculum, and we trained most of them, and the training is continuing moving forward. We are happy that because of our efforts of working with private and public universities and the bringing to the attention of the IATF and to our parliament or Congress, we were able to get funding for the development of smart campuses, subsidies for students who are affected by the lockdown, and subsidies for part-time teachers who did not receive any pay during the pandemic because of the no teach, no pay policy for part-timers. And in terms of access of those that were severely affected, about 200,000 Filipino OFWs were repatriated to the Philippines because they lost their jobs abroad or were unable to continue staying abroad. We launched the Tabang OFW so that the Commission and the Department of Labor can give subsidies to the children of affected OFW families. So we mobilized a 1 billion fund, and this is now being implemented in the country to target specifically the most severely affected families who are not covered by existing subsidies of government. Our free higher education continues. 1.3 million students in more than 200 public universities are no longer paying tuition and miscellaneous fees, and another 500,000 are getting subsidies through grants and financial assistance. So a total of about 1.8 million young Filipinos are getting financial subsidy from the national government as of the current school year. What are some of the lessons that we learned since March? We learned that the Commission can be nimble and responsive only because of the whole of nation approach through the IATF, and because we are working with higher education institutions and local governments on the ground. The success in addressing the impact of COVID-19 is made possible by the Bayanihan spirit. All national government agencies working together through the IATF, and constant communication and discussion with universities and local governments on the ground. We also realized that during the times of disaster, the brilliance of our higher education institutions are brought to fore, not only in producing COVID-19 products, but in adjusting as fast as possible to flexible learning. We recognize that there are some obstacles that can be solved, that cannot be solved overnight, like the issue of connectivity. But we also know that the Commission and higher education institutions have the capacity to adapt and be imaginative so that learning will continue. We understand that the digital divide exacerbates difficulties in adjusting to flexible learning. But we also know that innovations and adjustments will emerge while we continue to address the digital divide situation. We know that there are problems that can't be addressed by government, like the financial impact of COVID-19 on private universities. We are saddened that some small private universities have decided not to open this school year because the enrollment figures have really gone down. And we are concerned with the access of students to higher education if private universities stop operations. What we are doing and will continue to do is that the national government must work with private universities to get any form of amelioration and work on long-time solutions. What are other lessons learned? We now realize, and this is a fact for Philippine higher education, that from now on, flexible learning will be the norm. The old paradigm of face-to-face versus online learning will disappear, and in its place will be a flexible system where learning will move across several options, not only through a student's life, but beyond a student's university years. For academic matters, we are now seeing, and we will continue to see, that teachers must realize that the old norms are gone and they must adjust to new standards. And the Commission is committed to addressing or to helping develop new standards and to help teachers adjust to this. For example, there is a requirement for openness to engage and spend time with students, to spend more time with students, and use new technologies that will make conversations better and deeper. So the old tradition of a teacher lecturing in a classroom will be a thing of the past. In its place will be a combination of some face-to-face, some online asynchronous, and some online synchronous learning. And this will require a major shift in the way faculty members handle their classes. So this will require openness on the part of faculty members to spend more time with their students and maximize the use of technology to deepen and improve the conversation between students and faculty. There is also a recognition among higher education institutions in the Philippines for a constant modification of the syllabus and methodologies that will be used not just in teaching, but also in research and extension activities. There will be a transition from the traditional exam-based system that depends on knowledge creation to group work and project or task-based system. And finally, textbooks will no longer be the sole source of information in a flexible learning regime. So together, in the Bayanihan spirit, the Commission will continue to link up with higher education institutions to move forward under a new flexible learning environment. Thank you very much and good morning.